of NEC, Professor Kaviru Kinyanjui, the CEO of NEC, Dr. Joseph Kivilo. Over and above these wonderful people, the other honored guests in our midst. And for want of time, allow me not to mention all of them, but I want to indicate that really we value all of you. We value your presence here. You mean a lot to us because we see you as our key partners in the provision of quality education to our motherland. Therefore, allow me to say all protocols observed. This is a bright day, ladies and gentlemen, and where I was seated, and get the impression that we are not ready to cheer up. It seems to be done, eh? And yet there is no need, really. If you have a rite of passage, it's a moment of reflection, a moment kumwambia Yesu asante sana. And because I will not be able to greet all of you by hand, as we celebrate, tusalimiane wan jameni, asanteni, na Mungu awabariki ninyi. I welcome all of you to this function for the release of 2014 KCSE, ECD, and November business and the technical examination results. Before we handle this business of the day, allow me to grab this opportunity to highlight some of the key issues in regard to current education reforms in this nation. And I'll start with the secondary school fee structure. The government has issued school fee structures for the different categories of public secondary schools, which take effect, as you know, this year. And teachers are urged to strictly adhere to the structures so as to ensure that all Kenyans, irrespective of their backgrounds, have access to education. I wish to note that the ministry is aware of some institutions that have not followed the stipulated fee structures, particularly when I talked about the freeze of school fees as at 2013. Some went ahead and charged levies that the government has already covered in competition provided in secondary education. And as I've said so many times, ladies and gentlemen, this is unacceptable. And I wish to put on notice that such teachers, that once investigations confirm any such irregularities, appropriate disciplinary action will follow. And I'm happy we have the chair of TSE in our midst. The other matter I thought I needed to address is the issue of increased competition to secondary schools. The government has this year increased the competition to secondary schools so as to cater for a higher percentage of cost associated with the secondary education. This competition, ladies and gentlemen, shall be increased gradually over the next 2 to 3 years until such a situation is reached where parents no longer have to pay any schools as the entire cost of secondary education shall be met by the government of Kenya. That means our children will go to ECDs, from there to primary schools, then day secondary schools, and they will not pay a single penny. You don't seem to be happy about that. Can you clap for the government? And allow me to also mention about the release of examination certificates. It has been noted that despite the government issuing a directive that all certificates held by the institutions of learning in Kenya be released to students, some end teachers have openly defied this directive by continuing to the old student certificates. And teachers of secondary schools are once again reminded that in accordance with the NEC Act of 2012, it is indeed illegal to withhold student certificates for whatever reason. And we are not a country of impunity. If there is the law as it pertains to something, we have no choice but to implement it. So bearing in mind, this in mind, I wish to note here now that any head teacher reported to have withheld any student certificate will be dealt with as per the provisions of the existing laws of Kenya. Allow me also to mention about the government funding of examination fees. Yes, indeed, this has been mentioned earlier on, but there's no harm in re-emphasizing it. So for me, I'm very delighted to note that with effect from this year, 2015, the government of Kenya has committed itself to payment of examination fees for candidates sitting the KCPE and KCSE examination for those schools that are receiving free primary education and free secondary education funds. Indeed, my ministry has already released the funds, as you are told by the PS, which is good news. And the other issue is revamping of technical training. As has been mentioned by the PS in charge of science and the State Department of Science and Technology, in a bid to encourage students to enroll in technical courses and to provide more openings for training, the government is currently building 60 technical training institutes in 60 constituencies across the country. My ministry is also revamping 9 of the existing technical training institutes by stocking them so that when you go there, there's a state-of-the-art equipment. And then they will acquire the relevant skills and competencies that are required by the job market in all parts of this country. And we have said we don't want to have a scenario where people have to seek for this type of expertise in our cities alone. If you are somewhere in a far-flung area of this country, we expect, yes, you can look for a great person with skills in masonry or even plumbing and be able to get them there without much ado. The other issue which I thought I needed to revisit is ranking of schools. As said during the release of 2014 KCPE examination, I wish to reiterate that with effect from the 2014 national examination, my ministry discontinued ranking at national, county, and even sub-county levels. This is a policy decision, ladies and gentlemen, taken by the government that was informed by the demerits of ranking, which I said last time far outweigh the merits of the same. And indeed, based on the findings of various committees and task forces set up by the government to look at the education matter, including 2014 Kaimenyi Task Force on secondary fees, school fees, the 2012 Douglas Odhiambo Task Force on the education reforms. One of their key recommendations was just ban ranking of schools. And then in 2008, there was a parliamentary committee set up by Honorable David Koech. Again, that parliamentary committee on education, research and science and technology made a similar recommendation that we must ban ranking of schools. Except that was not enough, in 2001, Naomi Wangai, a former director of Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, as part of their recommendations, they recommended that ranking of schools be banned. And way back in 1999, there was a presidential commission of inquiry into the education system, which was chaired by none other than Dr. David Koech. That was addressing total quality education in our institutions. And one of their key recommendations was to ban ranking of schools. Therefore, I did not wake up one morning like a madman just to ban ranking of schools. Really, I want to make that very clear. As I had said during the release of 2014 KCSE examination, I wish to urge the media to respect this decision of the ministry. I further wish to note that for the KCSE examination, performance indices which are calculated to facilitate ranking have not been computed by the council, and hence it will not be possible to determine the amount of ranking of 3,073 candidates who scored the highest grade of A plain. This is because performance indices are calculated based on raw marks, which are solely the custody of NEC. Let's talk now about the year 2014 KCSE examination. In other words, the 2014 KCSE cohort. Turning to the release of these examinations, I wish to note that the cohort of 2014 examination candidates I will be releasing shortly. This cohort enrolled in Standard 1 in 2003, as you remember, and in Form 1 in 2011. The candidates represent the first beneficiaries of free primary education as well as free day secondary education. This is therefore a realization of the government's vision to increase the number of children accessing full cycle of primary and secondary education. While my ministry's efforts towards improving access are bearing fruit, I am disturbed to note that the dropout rate of students in secondary schools still remains a challenge. During the year 2011, when the 2014 KCSE examination cohort joined Form 1, a total of 521,601 students were admitted into our secondary schools. Out of these, 483,630 sat for the examinations in the year 2014, representing an overall wastage of 7.85%. This is a great concern to all of us, I believe, when you consider the huge sums of money or resources that the government has invested in secondary education in this country. During the release of the 2014 exams, I instructed the Education Standards, or what you call SCAC, to speedily investigate the factors that hinder pupils from completing a full cycle. I am pleased to note that the Council undertook the investigations as directed, and the findings of the said investigations indicated different patterns and reasons for dropping out of school in various counties in this country. With the ministers already looking into this, and some of the recommendations made include proper sensitization on the Basic Education Act provisions, such as child labor, because we still have some of our parents and guardians subjecting our children to child labor against the law. Then we have, of course, instances of child abuse, retrogressive cultural practices that you know, which hinder our children from staying in school against our wish and desire to keep these children in school up to the age of 18 years. I'm therefore once again instructing SCAC to undertake similar investigations in regard to this dropout, so that we can even go into it deeper and reduce it drastically, if not eliminate it completely. The other issue is failed administration and marking of the 2014 KCSE examination. The year 2014 examination written papers were successfully administered, as was mentioned by the CEO of NEC, and indeed the chairman, so I may not have to spend so much time on this. For the members of press, you can see this later. But really the success of the conduct of the examination is attributable to the tireless effort, dedication, and commitment of the 54,053 contracted professionals, as was mentioned earlier on, and a whole other list of individuals or groups which helped us without having to repeat them again. Besides that, I really want to acknowledge the roles played by these organizations, even though this was mentioned, because I feel when you do something good, even if we repeatedly congratulate you, there is no harm. I'm talking about the county directors of education who are with us this morning, the Teachers Service Commission, county directors,